Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. A historic day as President Trump is in the air on his way to the Middle East, Egypt, to prepare to sign that peace deal, ceasefire agreement. Let's take a look here. Yeah, we have the video. Here's Air Force One. This is what it looked like as he took off today, heading for the Middle East. So he's on his way. We have clips from the gaggle aboard Air Force One that we will share with you in a little while. Also, tonight we'll look at what's going on with China, tariffs, Canada being placed in a opportunistic position, but also kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, I think, in a way that only the most aware of Canadians, those who are most dialed into politics, will understand. We'll dig into that tonight as well, because we have an opportunity before us to do more with China, but there are pitfalls and dangers, and we'll dig into that a little bit as well. And my goodness, if ostriches could fly. If bulls could fly, if cows could fly, I'm beginning to think maybe they can. I don't know what to believe. Or maybe I do. But a lot of people don't. And we'll explain where I'm going with all that as well. And you know what? We might also have, because there's a lot of BS and they're laying it on pretty thick out there, in Edgewood, British Columbia. We'll show you. And we'll have maybe a conversation with Grok tonight. I've been wanting to do that. Never have live. But tonight, we might just do that. And then I'm going to leave you with something special at the end of tonight's broadcast. So stay with me. And that's a surprise. So stay with me. I'll be right back on the other side of this, and we'll dig into today's top news stories.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Yeah, so we're going to get to Jim Kerr and the Ostriches. Jim Kerr and the Ostriches later. Just letting everybody know, so you can let anybody else know that might want to know that we're going to get to Jim Kerr and the Ostriches later in the broadcast. But first to President Trump, this is what he had to say boarding Air Force One, talking about this peace deal in the Middle East.
See a lot of my friends. This is going to be a good one. So this is going to be a very special time, and I guess if you read your own papers and your own networks, everybody's very excited about this moment in time. So I'll see you on the plane. I think you're traveling with us, but this is a very special event. They had 500,000 people yesterday and today in Israel, and also the Muslim and Arab countries are all cheering. Everybody's cheering at one time. That's never happened before. Usually if you have one cheering, the other isn't. The other is the opposite. This is the first time everybody is amazed and they're thrilled, and it's an honor to be involved, and we're going to have an amazing time, and it's going to be something that's never happened before. So I'll see you on the plane, and we're going to have a good time. Okay, Peter? Nice to see you. Thank you, everybody. See you in a little while.
Okay, so that's what he had to say as he was boarding Air Force One. And it is a historic day. We'll see how far this goes, if it holds together. So far, the ceasefire appears to be holding. And J.D. Vance doing the weekend talk show circuit, the Sunday political shows. He was over here on, he was on ABC, I think first, then NBC later. He has confirmed in this interview on ABC that Hamas has 20 living hostages, and they are expected to release them within the next 24 hours. Well worth listening to what he has to say here. He also is making comments on other issues during these appearances today, and he said some stuff over on NBC that we're going to get to in a moment as well. But first, here's what he had to say on ABC this week. Here he is.
We're joined now by Vice President J.D. Vance. Mr. Vice President, thank you for joining us this morning. Let's start with the Middle East. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Hamas has confirmed they are holding 20 living hostages, and that those hostages are going to be released in the next 24 hours, early as today, perhaps. Have 20 living hostages been confirmed? When do you expect to see them?
Well, they've been confirmed, George. Of course, you don't know until you see these people alive, but thank God we expect to see them alive here in the next 24 hours, probably early tomorrow morning, U.S. time, which will be later in the day, of course, in Israel. But look, George, we have to remember this is a remarkable achievement from an administration that really chose a non-conventional path to diplomacy. And I think that's the major takeaway. The President of the United States instructed Marco Rubio, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff. He said, get a deal done. Talk to the Gulf Arab states. Talk to Israel, find where there's common ground here, and actually let's go and find a way to get it done. And because of that, we are on the cusp of true peace in the Middle East, really for the first time in my lifetime. Certainly, these 20 hostages are going to come home to their families, George. I think this is a great moment for our country. Our country should be proud of our diplomats who made this happen. It's really a great moment for the world, too, which is why the president's going to go over there and celebrate with these hostages. But it's a great thing, and I'm very excited about it.
200 U.S. troops are being sent to Israel to monitor the agreement. What exactly will they be doing? Will they actually go into Gaza? And are you concerned they could get caught in some crossfire?
George, so that story is actually misreported. We already have troops at Central Command. We've had them for decades in this country. They are going to monitor the terms of the ceasefire. And that's everything from ensuring that the Israeli troops are at the agreed upon line, ensuring that Hamas is not attacking innocent Israelis, doing everything that they can to ensure the peace that we've created actually sustains and endures. But the idea that we're going to have troops on the ground in Gaza, in Israel, that is not our intention. That is not our plan. There was a bit of a misreporting there, but we are going to monitor this piece to ensure that it endures. The other piece of good news that's been underreported, I think, George, is that Indonesia and a number of other majority Muslim states, they've actually offered to send ground troops to Gaza to ensure the necessary peacekeeping takes place. That's not something the United States is going to be expected to do. That's something the Muslim world is going to step up and do. And that, again, is because of the Trump administration's diplomacy.
The president has also pushed for National Guard deployments in several American cities. As you know, that's been questioned by several federal judges, including Trump appointees, also the Republican governor of Oklahoma and chairman of the National Governors Association, Kevin Stitt. Here's what Governor Stitt said. "We believe in the federalist system that states' rights. Oklahomans would lose their mind if Pritzker and Illinois sent troops down to Oklahoma during the Biden administration." How do you respond to Governor Stitt?
Well, I'd say to Governor Stitt, you have to look at what's happening on the ground in Chicago. And the reason why Illinois is a different case from Chicago is because Chicago has been given over to lawlessness and gangs for too long, George. If you look at the murder rates in Chicago, the violent crime rates, you have women who have young families. They're terrified their kids are going to get killed in a drive-by shooting. We have accepted this for far too long in the United States of America and some of our biggest cities. And Chicago, unfortunately, is the worst. It's a beautiful city. It's got great people. We know the gross majority of the violent crime in that city is committed by a very tiny fraction of the population. Why shouldn't federal troops empower the people in Chicago to live safe lives when the governor and the local mayor just simply refuse to do their job?
But as you know,
okay, we're going to come back to this. We're going to come back to the whole troop deployment and even talk of maybe invoking the Insurrection Act in a little while. But first, let's pivot back to the situation in the Middle East. Here's Fox News reporting that Israeli hostages within hours could be transported within Gaza to Israeli special forces, given immediate medical checks, and then they could be flown to regional hospitals. Let's pick this one up. And here's the latest from Fox.
They understand that many of these hostages are in very difficult health conditions, and so they have the Red Cross meeting them inside Gaza at 2 to 3 different points within the enclave. They'll then be driven to Israeli special forces and transferred to the Raim base that sits along the Gaza border. They'll receive initial medical checks there, be reunited with immediate family members, and then flown to some regional hospitals here in Israel. Like I said, though, the anticipation around the release of these hostages could not be higher. For the first time in 2 years, the Israeli people are breathing a sigh of relief. They understand that President Trump has been able to get together this deal that not only is going to bring the hostages home, but could usher in a new chapter of peace and prosperity for the region. And so a lot on the table here, and of course the focus on the hostages. But tomorrow, President Trump will be giving a speech before the Israeli Knesset. The entire world will be watching to hear more about his historic achievement, getting this deal across the finish line, and then looking toward the future, implementing phase 2 of this deal and the other points within this 20-point peace plan. John?
Okay. So the world will be watching. No doubt about that. But it seems like a lot of people focused very much on the process here and not maybe so much the actual deal. We'll circle around and come back to that as well. But here's audio from the media gaggle on Air Force One, where the president is also addressing the number of hostages still apparently confirmed alive tonight.
What is the latest that you've heard about the hostages, when they will be released? Do you expect to meet with any of them?
Well, I hear the hostages might be even a little early, but I don't want to say that. So they have the hostages. I understand all 20, and we may get them out a little bit early. Getting them was amazing, actually, because we were involved, and they were in places that you don't want to know about, deep deep.
What is
And while we're told everyone is celebrating, I wouldn't say that's necessarily the case because, as I indicated, everybody seems to be pretty focused on this process of, this vehicle's driving there. These hostages will be released at this time. The Israeli forces will move back behind this yellow line by this hour. These hostages will be released within the next, well, it was 72. Now it's less than 24. And that's all like process. But what is the actual deal? Some people, critics, especially on the Palestinian side, are saying this whole thing is, and they're not my words, a farce. Here's Richard Medhurst addressing exactly these issues.
This so-called ceasefire deal does nothing to address any of the grievances that led to the Aqsa flood on October 7th. None. There is still an Israeli siege. There is still an Israeli blockade. You cannot leave by land, air, or sea. The Israelis still control whether doctors can get into Gaza, whether journalists can get into Gaza. There is no mention of, a Palestinian state or simply allowing Palestinians to self-govern. Instead, they want to bring in some colonial viceroy like Tony Blair or Donald Trump or John Doe to come in and rule over Palestinians, like as if they're not capable of self-governance. When ironically, Gaza had one of the highest rates of university graduates and academics per capita, right? So, I mean, the irony is astonishing. And they still won't treat Palestinians like human beings. They deny them their human rights. They abuse them, violate them, occupy them, besiege them. None of these grievances have been addressed. So even if you're a Zionist and you're trying to plan long term for Israel's so-called security, you're really shooting yourself in the foot. But trust someone like Netanyahu and Jared Kushner and Donald Trump to give a crap about reason. Right? This has always been the plan of Zionists. It's always been that way since Ben Gurion, right? Who they like to contrast to Netanyahu as being some kind of like rational, more down to earth left, like a liberal Zionist or whatever. No. Even since Ben Gurion, you can go read that letter he wrote to his son in 1937. He talks about how the whole game plan is to just take as much land as possible, right? It's to take as much land as possible. So I fear the second they get their hostages, their POWs back, the Israelis are going to resume the bombardment. They're going to resume the ethnic cleansing, just like we saw in January, right? Just like we saw in January with that ceasefire, and just like we saw the first time there was a week-long ceasefire with the first hostages being exchanged. This whole deal has no deadlines for the Israelis. Where are the deadlines? There's no deadline for when Israeli troops have to do any of this so-called withdrawal. It's not a withdrawal. They're literally staying inside of Gaza, just moving to different places inside of Gaza. There is no timeline for this. They've drawn these lines on a map, but even these lines, which are this occupation of Gaza, which is already insulting on its own, has no deadline. There is no timeline for any of this stuff. When do the Israelis move to the yellow line? When do they move to the green line? The red one, or this so-called security buffer zone? When do they move there? In 1,000 years? In 10 months? What is the timeline? There is none. There is none. The only timeline in this whole deal is, of course, imposed on the Palestinians. Give us the hostages in 72 hours or else. So we'll see in the next 72 hours what happens. I hope that I'm wrong on all counts. I would love to be wrong, but I don't think that this is going to ensure any sort of peace. I mean, it's absolute madness. There's also no mention of UN peacekeepers. You talk about bringing in some kind of security force, some vaguely defined security force. What does that mean? We saw when they talked about replacing the United Nations and bringing in the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, we saw what that was. That turned out to be a death trap. It turned out to be a death trap. Those US contractors were luring hungry Palestinians into death traps and executing them. Yes, it's actually that evil. It's actually that evil. It's probably more evil than what I'm describing to you. It's actually that evil. Not to mention that this so-called, this international force, this vaguely defined force, they don't even talk about who it's going to be. That, we've heard whispers, oh, it might have some troops from Qatar, it might have some troops from Egypt, but we know that they're sending 200 American troops, US troops right now to Gaza. And they say, oh yeah, there won't be any boots on the ground. Yeah, the last time they said that was when they built this bullshit pier where they ended up killing 200 Palestinians, more than 200 Palestinians in a so-called hostage rescue operation. It was basically a bloodbath to rescue a bunch of Israeli soldiers. That's what it was. So there was that pier, and then the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Every time they bring American troops into Gaza, it ends in a bloodbath. Do you understand? It's not me hypothesizing. I'm not speculating. These are facts. This is what happened in Gaza during this genocide in the last 2 years. In the same place, with the same people, okay? So why would it be any different the third time around? Why would it be any different the third time around? Not to mention what the Israelis have done for put the main imperial force aside, right? I'm just talking about like a few hundred American troops. Look what they've done. Never mind the Israelis. So there are no deadlines. And this idea that, Hamas have agreed to, and also another thing with the deadlines, there's no deadline for when Palestinian hostages get released. So how do you put a 72-hour deadline on handing over the Israeli POWs, but there's no deadline for when the Palestinians get handed over, of which there are, scores and leagues more. You've got thousands of Palestinians in Israeli dungeons. You've got at least 1,500 in administrative detention alone. So in administrative detention is basically you've got no charge, no trial, not even allowed to know why you've been kidnapped. You're a hostage by definition. Where's the deadline for handing over those people? Again, this whole thing doesn't deal with any of these grievances at all. At all. It's a slap in the face. It's an insult. And this idea that Hamas are going to go and give up their weapons, I mean, they're taking the piss with this whole thing. It's really like you see that the Israeli way of so-called negotiating is to add so many insulting things on a list that you just look at it and you go, what the fuck? That's they do that on purpose. So your only response is to walk away, and then they can sort of justify whatever colonial violence they inflict on you, like as if the two are comparable. What Hamas did this time, Hamas said, we agree to the ceasefire part. We're cool with that. And we'll discuss the other, we'll iron out and hash out the rest of the details afterwards. So, you could chalk that up to being very good negotiation tactics and so on. I mean, frankly, I follow this for a living. It's no different from what they've been saying for 2 years. So I don't really feel that they pulled something particularly novel this time. They've been saying the same thing for 2 years. We'll give you all the hostages if you just piss off and pull out of the Gaza Strip. So anyway, that's being described as a very novel or smart way to have kind of, go on a ceasefire, but and some aid in, and that's it. So what about the day after, right? Which is a term that they use. Basically, who's going to rule Gaza? What's going to happen? We'll watch this interview in a second and discuss that in more detail. But I just want to make something clear. You've got a generation of children. You've got a generation of Palestinian children in Gaza that have grown up now under genocide. And this might not even be the first Israeli onslaught. They might have been alive for 2014, Cast-led 2009. Literally, you lose count. You've got a whole generation of Palestinian children that are going to grow up, and they are going to bring forward the third wave of Palestinian resistance. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm a political analyst. I'm a journalist. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't shit on me because you don't like the truth. It's not me who creates these conditions. I'm saying you haven't addressed any of the grievances that led to the Aqsa flood. You haven't addressed the siege. You haven't addressed the occupation, the statehood. None of it. The human rights. None of it has been addressed. As a matter of fact, it's even worse. This is making it even worse. So you've guaranteed that you get a third wave of Palestinian resistance. Now, whether that is an Islamist a wave like Hamas, Hezbollah, etc., or it's a secular Marxist wave like the PLO, or rather more specifically the PFLP, and so on, I don't know. I can't predict that far into the future. But you're going to get a third wave of resistance. And those children that have grown up under this genocide are going to make Hamas look like a bunch of altar boys. The next wave of Palestinian resistance will make Hamas look like altar boys. Because they've grown up under this genocide. They've been subjected to far worse than whatever happened in the first and the second Intifada. I mean, this genocide makes the Intifada look like a joke. Like a joke! Okay? So you've guaranteed another October 7, another Al-Aqsa flood. That's guaranteed. It's not my doing. Don't shoot the messenger. That's your doing. The empire, the Israelis have guaranteed that. So this idea that, you're going to go ahead and disarm Hamas, I mean, even if you do that, you might convince the leadership to do that. You might convince the people in Turkey and Qatar to do that. You're not going to convince the men that are my age that have grown up under Israeli bombs in Gaza to do that on the ground. You're not going to do that. It's not happening. It's just, it's common sense. It's common sense. It's not my opinion or, what I want. I'm just telling you how it is. When you get a bunch of sleazebags in suits like this sitting around dictating, like they shit roses or something, about what's going to happen, to people's futures, there's going to be blowback. And again, it's not my fault. I'm not condoning or condemning it. I'm telling you how it is. There's an action, there's a reaction. You can't have occupation without resistance. This peace plan does nothing to address any of the grievances. As a matter of fact, it makes them worse.
Okay. So if you want to check that out, that's over on Twitter, and you can watch the rest of Richard Medhurst's commentary and analysis. I would say he has some valid points. I often do not agree with what Richard Medhurst says or recommends, advises. I've been at odds with some of his positions on things, but tonight, valid points, I would say. Because as I've just indicated, a lot of people are very focused on the process of when is one of these hostages being released? Where is, when do these vehicles show up at this line? And process, not what the actual deal is. As you begin to peel back the layers of this, you also find that there might be some backroom deals being made that have been made throughout this. I think this whole thing, as I've been looking at it, seems to have been the catalyst for this was the Israeli attack on Hamas leaders in Qatar. And then because this happened, you have Israel attacking a very important U.S. ally, well, not really attacking Qatar, but launching an attack within sovereign Qatari space on Qatari soil. That was an absolute insult and a violation of Qatari sovereignty. And it put the United States, Donald Trump, and his administration into a very delicate position. And they had to do something to appease the Qataris. This facilitated a broader discussion. Also, it's interesting to see that Jared Kushner has reemerged and has been in the news and has been involved in this process. And if you dig into his past dealings and his real estate dealings, you'll see that Qatar came to his aid to the tune of, I think, $1.5 billion plus some other money that came from another Middle Eastern state, and bailed him out of a real estate problem on the U.S. side. And there is a lot of money involved, billions of dollars. And as I was laying out last night, I think behind the scenes, what's really the predicate for all of this, the foundation for it all, is the business deal that paves the way for Trump's vision to make his Riviera of the Middle East an actual reality, with very, very, very rich people who have been outside influences on what has been going on in the Middle East and in Gaza all through this, by making them a deal they couldn't refuse, an offer they couldn't refuse. They can now invest in rebuilding Gaza, turning it into this Riviera of the Middle East. And it has been referenced through all of this as well, so that you follow the money. This is about money. This isn't really about a two-state solution. This isn't about addressing, as Richard Medhurst said, any of the grievances that the Palestinian people have. It doesn't address any of that. And it actually it pushes Netanyahu off to the side. Because when Israel attacked Qatar, Trump had to do something to appease the Qataris, because they have this massive military base inside Qatar. That's why you're seeing this announcement this past week about Qatar and the military base on U.S. soil as well, and the training facility that they're going to have, and I believe it's Idaho, near Canada. It's been misrepresented, I think, a little bit in the media, but there's more going on there than meets the eye as well, and it all hooks back into what's going on right now in the Middle East. So this is transactional. This is a ceasefire, but I don't know if this is really going to hold together, because, as Richard Medhurst so rightly points out in his analysis, which was actually from yesterday, but it bleeds into today, this doesn't really address the core problems at all. And so this is coercion. This is Trump actually flexing some muscle, economic, and using the threat of U.S. military might to get something done in the Middle East. And this shows that if you actually have will, you can make things happen there. But at what cost? In this case, how has peace been achieved, or how is peace maybe going to be achieved? Is there freedom at the core of this? Is there any kind of democracy? Is there any kind of actual justice? Or is this coercive? You can get peace through coercion. You can get peace at the end of a gun. You can get peace without democracy, without freedom, but peace doesn't always mean a free and fair or just society. I'm not sure where this will end up, but I see big red warning flags. And it smells very authoritarian to me, and very transactional. Here's what it looks like in Gaza today as aid has begun to roll in. Khan Yunis. And, we here in Canada, the U.S., we complain about so much. Just look at what has happened here. Look at these people. These are human beings, real people. This is their reality. And look at this. What have you got to complain about? Doesn't matter what I say. People get upset with me either way. If I point this out, the pro-Israeli side gets mad. If I say October 7th was a bad idea and they shouldn't have done that, I get kicked back over there. I'm just laying out the information for you folks. And I think anybody with eyes can see that that's a bad situation. Here's Benjamin Netanyahu. We'll just dip into this as it was picked up by Sky News.
Victories that amaze the entire world. But I'd like to tell you that wherever we fought, we won. But to the same degree, I must say that the campaign has not ended. There are many security challenges ahead of us. Some of our enemies are trying to rehabilitate themselves in order to attack us again. But we are on it, as we say. Yes, there are many opportunities because of those victories. I believe that with shared forces, we will overcome the challenges and we will make those opportunities be fulfilled. My wife and I, many times did we meet the families of the hostages. We saw their pain, their yearning, their tears. Those encounters accompanied me in any decision I made during the war. We embraced them and we promised them, I will not remain quiet until I bring them home. I would like to thank the IDF soldiers, the security forces, the bereaved families who lost their dearestly beloveds. Those are the heroes who they bear the pain of them in their hearts and in our hearts. And I would like to say to you, the citizens of Israel, on your fortitude and resilience, that you stood firm because you believed in the justification of our path. We're really embarking on a new path, one of healing, and hopefully the healing of hearts. Together, we will continue reinforcing our country, and we will continue winning and overcoming, and we will promise the infinity of the State of Israel.
Benjamin Netanyahu. Man. Everybody's celebrating. I guess, you know, like no matter what, right? Like, take peace, just take peace, no matter what it takes, just take it, because it's being so terrible. But somehow things don't feel right to me through all of this. So very uneasy tonight. Now back to J.D. Vance. Of course, he commented on what's going on in the Middle East. Now the vice president over on NBC. He was beginning to get into this over on ABC, but I'm going to pick up this portion of his interview from Meet the Press, where he addresses the use of U.S. troops in the United States and the possible invocation of the Insurrection Act. Does that make anybody nervous, or like the Insurrection Act? U.S. troops on American soil?
Let me ask you, of course, there's a major legal battle underway about the administration's deployment of the National Guard. It does come as NBC News is reporting that the administration has been seriously discussing invoking the Insurrection Act. That would give the president the power to direct federal troops to conduct law enforcement functions in the case of a national emergency. Is that the case? Are you seriously considering invoking the Insurrection Act?
Well, the president's looking at all of his options. Right now, he hasn't felt he needed to, but we have to remember, why are we talking about this, Kristen? Because crime has gotten out of control in our cities, because our ICE agents, the people who are enforcing our immigration laws, have faced a 1,000% increase in violent attacks against them. We have people right now who are going out there, who are doing the job the president asked them to do, who are enforcing our immigration laws. They're being assaulted, they're being beaten, they're being shot at. The problem here is not the Insurrection Act or whether we actually invoke it or not. The problem is the fact that the entire media in this country cheered on by a few far-left lunatics, have made it okay to tee off on American law enforcement.
Yeah.
We cannot accept that in the United States of America. We want everybody, black or white, rich or poor, to be safe in the United States of America. But to do that, we have to empower our law enforcement agents to keep us safe. That's what we're talking about doing.
Couple of points here. First
ahead,
of all, an Illinois judge said that state and local authorities have been able to handle protest activity, that ICE, that other federal agencies have been able to continue to do their work. Crime is down in both Chicago and Portland, but is there a rebellion here? That's what would trigger an insurrection act. Is it imminent?
Kristen, crime is down in Chicago and Portland often because they're so overwhelmed at the local level, they're not even keeping the statistics properly. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had an ICE office get shot at by a far-left assassin who was trying to kill our law enforcement officers. He fortunately didn't kill law enforcement officers. He did kill some other innocent people in the process. We cannot allow the far left in this country to tee off on our law enforcement officers. We've got to do something about it. And that's all the president's talking about. I mean, there are places in Chicago, Kristen, where people are afraid to take their children. They're afraid to go out of their houses for fear of gun violence, for fear of gang drive-by shootings. That's not okay in the United States of America. The president just wants people to be kept safe, and we're exploring everything that we can do to make sure that the American people are safe in their own country.
The Insurrection Act. That's to say that there's an imminent existential threat against the government, to overthrow the government. Is it really at that level? Or is this a pretext to purge political opposition? Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act within Canada, and people were livid. They're talking about using the Insurrection Act in the U.S. while there's talk of a looming possible civil war. And I see the same people who are livid about what happened in Canada applauding that kind of talk down in the U.S. It's like, I don't know, it's illogical and disturbing to me. I'm worried, but I'll be back on the other side of this.
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay. And you know, I think some people just don't want peace. I'm not sure what to make of this one, but here's Dinesh D'Souza, of course, conservative, pro-Trump, pro-MAGA, I would say. I've always liked him, very smart guy, posting this, and he's saying, this is a video. He's saying Hamas is getting ready to execute these 3 dissidents in this video. He says, this is the group that Tucker Carlson insists is a political movement. Can anyone give an explanation for why a smart guy like Tucker would say that? Let's bring this up. This is a video that he, I think, curated off Telegram. That's actually a platform I do not use. Okay, here it is.
وخانوا شعبهم وخانوا قضيتهم ووضعوا أيديهم بأيدي الاحتلال من أجل قتل أبناء شعبهم فقد تقرر حكم الإعدام على هؤلاء المتخاذلين. خليه يكمل. وعلى راسهم العميل الكبير ياسر ابو شباب والعميل الكبير رامي حلس والعميل الكبير احمد جنديه والكبير العميل اشرف المنسي.
So I can't say exactly when this video was shot. I don't have full context on it. But when I'm seeing this stuff still posted just within hours by a prominent influencer like Dinesh D'Souza, I have to say it doesn't feel like peace to me. That's all I can say about it. Things just don't feel right. Even as we're being told we're on the verge of unprecedented peace in the Middle East. I hope we're on the verge of unprecedented peace in the Middle East, but doesn't feel like it. Something feels off. Back to Trump, Air Force One, the media gaggle, shifting gears to refocus on China, as he would say, asked about the 100% tariffs that he is threatening to impose.
So President, November 1st, 100% tariffs on China is what you said. Is that still the plan?
Yeah, right now it is. Yeah, let's see what happens. For me, you know what November 1st is? An eternity. November 1st is an eternity for me.
So there's
For somebody else, it's right around the corner. For me, when I hear November 1st, it's an eternity. Go ahead.
So President,
Interesting for him to kind of say that. Today, CTV reporting that Ottawa, there was an interview that Ottawa is facing pressure now because China has offered a deal on tariffs to Canada. Let me see if I'm not sure if I've got the actual clip here or not. Yeah, right here. I don't have the clip, but I do have the information. All right. So I became aware of this morning. And in this interview, China's ambassador to Canada has said that China will remove canola tariffs if Canada scraps the EV levies. In fact, I think it will go even further than that. We're also hearing that if Canada scraps tariffs against China, not only will they get rid of tariffs against Canada, they'll also buy Canadian oil. A lot of Canadian oil. Says here, news that China would remove tariffs on the Canadian agriculture sector if Canada drops its levies has prompted swift reaction and now growing pressure for Ottawa to act. Chinese ambassador Wang Di made the comments in an exclusive interview with Vasi Kapelos on CTV's Question Period on Sunday today. If the EV tariffs are removed, then China will also remove the tariffs on the relevant products of Canada, said Wang. That comment prompted a quick response from prairie premiers whose farmers have been hurt by the punishing policies. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew called this a critical moment in a letter to Prime Minister Mark Carney posted on the social media platform X. Here's the letter. Let us take a look, shall we? There it is. So I am writing to urge your government to seize the opportunity presented by recent remarks from the Chinese ambassador to Canada. He indicated that China is prepared to lift its tariffs on Canadian canola and pork if Canada removes the 100% tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles. This is a critical moment. The retaliatory tariffs imposed by China have already caused steep price declines for canola, threatening the livelihoods of thousands of Manitoba farmers and to the stability of rural communities. The tariffs are also causing steep losses in the pork industry. One large vertically integrated producer is noting a $19 million negative impact on an annualized basis. Every day these tariffs remain in place, the harm to prairie producers deepens. Canada's trade policy must balance long-term industrial goals and national security with immediate economic realities, as well as a national responsibility to grow every region of Canada's economy. It goes on. You've got the idea. The Carney government sharply criticized because of Canada's tariffs on electric vehicles coming from China, resulting in the retaliatory tariffs against canola. Why has all that happened? Here's why Canada is in a really tough position. It is because of the United States of America. The tariffs against China were originally put into place, I would say, because the Biden administration had their, they were pushing full steam ahead and accelerating the electrification of the auto industry. But on the U.S. side and Canadian side, for that matter, unable to compete really against these heavily subsidized EV vehicles being produced in China. Now, I'm just queuing up this interview on CTV so we can maybe get you a clip from this. So Canada really kind of, I need a moment while this thing queues up. Canada doing the bidding of the United States all the way along here, first with the Biden administration, the pro-EV policies of the Biden administration. Now, okay, I think here we go. Yes. Okay, let's bring this up and let's take a look at this because this is very significant for the Canadian economy, especially amid this trade war with the United States. Here we go. But see, now everything has changed because Trump has certainly tapped the brakes, maybe smashed the brakes on the move toward electrification of the auto industry, and now wants all our auto plants. He's turned the entire industry upside down. Started doing that actually in his first administration. And now we see opportunity, business opportunity with China, but will we be allowed to pursue that by Trump?
Trump's trade war has prompted a frantic search for new markets for Canadian trade, but the sheer size of the American economy is hard to replace. In the world's second largest market, China, well, relations are strained to say the least. Canada has a slate of tariffs in place on Chinese imports, including on electric vehicles, steel, and aluminum. China has hit back with significant levies of its own on Canadian agriculture, including most notably on all canola products. A few weeks ago, China's Premier and Prime Minister Carney met on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, the highest political level meeting between the two countries since 2018. With me now is China's ambassador to Canada, Wang Di. Hi, Ambassador. It's a pleasure to welcome you back to our studio. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you for inviting me again.
I'm going to start right away on the primary irritant between Canada and China right now, and that is the tariffs on electric vehicles and tariffs on canola and other agricultural products. I have a very simple question. Are the tariffs on Canadian agricultural products directly on there because of the EV tariffs?
I think the question you have raised touches the crux of the problems in our trade relations. I agree with what you said, that China's tariffs on Canadians' agricultural products are a countermeasure against the EV tariffs and the unilateral unjustified tariffs on China's steel and aluminum products. And I have said multiple times, if Canada is ready to correct these practices, China will also respond accordingly.
can I follow up then and ask very bluntly, if Canada removes the tariffs on Chinese EVs, China will then remove tariffs on Canadian agricultural products?
So if Canada removes the unilateral unjustified tariffs on Chinese products, China will also reciprocate accordingly. And if the EV tariffs are removed, then China will also remove the tariffs on the relevant products of Canada.
So Canada maintains that those tariffs, or has maintained until very recently, I should say, that those tariffs are justified. I know that China does not feel that they're justified, as you just pointed out. I do want to ask, though, against the backdrop of the proposition from China to Canada, the one we discussed last time, of expanding our relationship based on, I believe, what you called mutual practical interests. Would it be naive of Canada to expand a relationship wherein, you know, for example, on canola, most of our canola goes to China, and you have used that specific agricultural good to essentially retaliate against Canada? Like you've used the fact that we depend on China as a primary export market to exploit it. Would it be naive of us to expand a relationship wherein that is what's happening?
Well, the essence of bilateral trade cooperation and trade relationship is mutually beneficial and win-win. If you look at the history of the past decades of China-Canada relationship, you will see that in trade we have achieved fruitful outcomes, and these outcomes are the result of mutual respect and win-win cooperation and mutual benefit. And what I want to say is that the trade disputes between China and Canada are not caused by China. In China, we say the one who tied the knot should be the one who unties it. So China is not the one to blame in this whole process, in this whole situation. And the problem was caused by Canada. So if Canada took the initiative to correct its policies, China will adjust accordingly.
I understand the point that
I would say it's the United States really that caused the problem, because they want Canada. They need Canada. They require Canada to fall into line and adopt very similar trade policies that are in alignment with U.S. interests. And when you live next door to Godzilla, you don't have much choice.
that you're making, and I understand that Canada was first to levy tariffs on EVs. Once again, I'll point out that the Canadian government at the time identified a host of reasons, everything from national security to the domestic industry here, and aligning with U.S. policy to implement those tariffs. I understand your characterization, and I'm not looking to necessarily lay blame. I'm asking because the pitch right now and the prospect that the government is considering is an expanded relationship with China, an expanded economic relationship with China. In canola, we have a prime example of a product that, you know, Canadians have decided should mostly go to China. And you use that fact, China uses that fact to hit back somewhere where you know it will hurt. And my question is more along the lines of, should we pursue a bigger relationship if that is the case?
Like what I have said, the essence of trade between two countries should be mutually beneficial and win-win. So as long as this spirit is upheld in trade and economic cooperation, then the cooperation will get better and better. But if this spirit is violated, then, and if one side only pursues its own interests while sacrificing the interests of the other party, then this trade cooperation, either it is with China, either it is with other countries, will not sustain.
I want to ask about a different area of potentially mutual cooperation, and it's a very alive discussion here in Canada right now around exporting more oil and more gas, more conventional energy to China. There's a debate right now about a second pipeline, for example, to carry oil from Alberta to BC. If Canada were to be able to supply, let's say, double the amount of oil that it is right now, is there a market in China for that?
The energy cooperation will become a new growth, has already become a new growth point for China-Canada trade. And I have done some homework. After the TMX expansion project was opened, the import of oil, crude oil, by China from Canada has exceeded 1 million tons every month. And in June this year, this number was 1.56 million tons.
So, oh my God. This is dangerous. See, Trump wants to go to war with China. This is very dangerous talk. We're getting along too well with China, you see. And if we start selling oil to China and do less trade with the US, and if we react in this, we'll get Venezuelanized. I swear, this is there's been so much talk of the 51st state stuff and annexation and all these efforts to destabilize the government here. I've been highlighting all of this. This is all tied in. This is absolutely what this is about. It's a sin to not share your oil with Trump. And if we go down this path, see, this is the problem when you live next door to Godzilla. Trump, MAGA, they're exerting pressure. And it isn't, we'd like to engage in a mutually beneficial trade agreement. It's like we're going to take over your country unless you do what we say. We don't like your politics. We don't like your liberal government. You got to get rid of them. You can't have these policies. We don't like your healthcare system. Screw that. We're going to give money to these separatists to destabilize everything because we want all the oil flowing to the U.S. People get confused. They don't know what the hell is going on. They're our greatest ally, and yet at the same time, our greatest adversary right now. The greatest threat to Canada is the United States of America, but more specifically, Trump. Because he wants what we have. He wants our resources. He wants especially the oil. And he has this vision, and he is engaged in executing a plan in order to realize this vision of regional dominance, geopolitical dominance over the Western Hemisphere. From everything from Panama to Greenland, it's all going to be under U.S. sovereignty, essentially, either de facto or de jure. Oh my God. And when this ambassador from China sits there and says, we'll trade with you. All you have to do is let's just trade, free trade, and we'll buy all your oil. Okay, but no, you're not allowed, because if a deal like that is struck, do you know what will happen? You're going to get like these pseudo journalists who are out there talking about the Vancouver model and the fentanyl crisis and China. They're going to drum up all that stuff and grains of truth exaggerated to create all this fear and a pretext for the U.S. doing whatever they want to do to us up here. Oh my God, all the terrorists flowing in over the border into the United States, and all the drugs flowing from Canada into the United States. It's a national security concern. Gonna have to do something about that. I guess we'll just have to, I don't know, since he's already ready to invoke the Insurrection Act within his own country, I don't think it would take much for him to take another step do something really unthinkable here in Canada, especially when we see what's going on down in Venezuela right now. And who knows what the truth is about whether Maduro stole the election down there or whatever. Bottom line is Trump doesn't like him because he's a communist. And we keep hearing all this same kind of rhetoric leveled at Canada, where our liberal government is a communist regime. It is not. Yeah, social democratic, that's for sure. And I certainly would like a little less government in my life, but we're certainly not a communist nation at this point. Anybody asserting that is exaggerating or maybe just misguided and fueling and feeding into this propaganda, which is creating a pretext and an excuse for Trump to do basically whatever he wants up here. This kind of dynamic has been in place like since before Confederation. Really hit a fever point, I think, at certain periods, like, you know, the development of the Avro Arrow, which was kiboshed. And I think there's real truth in, you know, the stories about Canada not pursuing or not proceeding with the development of that fighter jet because the United States just didn't want Canada to be involved in the development of cutting edge aerospace technology and fighter jet technology, weapon systems that might challenge their dominance in that area, challenge their military industrial complex. It would be a threat to them, not only economically, but maybe even militarily. And they can't have that right on their doorstep. And that's why we keep hearing all this propaganda, I would say, about, oh, Chinese troops on Canadian soil. Grains of truth exaggerated in order to make it sound much worse than it is, in order to justify whatever actions or political positions even that the Trump administration wants to take against our country. Plain as day to me. And I know that, you know, I'm going to be getting texts tonight and phone calls and email messages from the haters. Just please, if you could stop threatening my dog, that would be nice. Okay? He's generally pretty friendly, but if you decide to follow through and do something, he will rip your face off. Just be forewarned. Okay? So he's friendly until he's not. Yeah, he's not a poodle. That being said, let's take a little break. We'll come back on the other side of this.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
All right. BYD, you know, the electric vehicle company from China, huge, and they're selling cars all over the world at prices way below what they're being produced for here in North America. And you know who's heavily invested in that? An American, Warren Buffett. If you think that the auto industry is American, if Donald Trump thinks that the auto industry is American and he's going to bring it all back to the United States, the auto industry has been globalized for decades. And BYD, very much a Chinese company, but global in scope as well. And these companies are setting up factories all around the world. I don't know if there's a way without, you know, triggering an invasion of Canada. I say go for it. Bring it on. Let's explore other opportunities. If if people are saying we want something mutually beneficial, I like that language. When I hear somebody else saying you will do what we say, or 250% tariffs on you, Same thing with our agricultural industry. He's coming for the Trump administration wants access to our ag sector. That's what he wants. He's wanted it all along. He wants our dairy industry, the supply management system dismantled, and he wants our poultry industry. They want access to that. Our system, including what the CFIA does, is designed to protect smaller farm operations here in Canada and protect Canada's food sovereignty, which is to say that it's designed to protect the economic integrity of our farms to make sure that they're viable and they survive, even though they are much smaller than what you have on the US side, so that we will always have the ability to feed ourselves. It isn't just an economic consideration. It's an existential consideration as a country, because any country, if you want to be sovereign, if you want to be viable as a country, you need to be able to feed yourself, keep people housed. And that's what these policies have been about, to make sure that we have farmers in viable farm operations here in Canada. And the prices here, as we pointed out night after night when we've gone grocery shopping online and actually at the grocery store, if you look at the price of dairy here, if you look at the price of chicken here, it is actually very comparable to what's in the United States anyway, even though on the US side, you have farm operations. Like if you look at chicken operations, the poultry industry, 11 times bigger than what we have in Canada. But the standards in Canada are higher. The quality standards, the standards for things like the use of antibiotics in chickens, the prohibitions here are much stricter than what you have on the US side. But if they gain access to our market, if they manage to break it down, if they manage to destroy what we have in place here, it isn't just about tariffs and money and numbers. It's about what we choose to put into our bodies, what we choose to eat. And right now, our poultry is not injected with a lot of the things that they're injected with down in the US. Our poultry is cleaner. No hormones, no antibiotics. Lot strict, and the welfare of the poultry here protected through regulatory inspections. On the US side, a lot of that stuff is voluntary, and the welfare of the birds is protected here on the Canadian side in a much more rigorous fashion as well. Because the size of the operations, the way the birds are kept, the regulations here are stricter. The size, the scope of the operations here also much smaller in order to ensure quality and regulatory standards are met. So for instance, here, farm operations maybe have, I don't know what the exact numbers would be, but like maybe 20,000 chickens in an operation. Down in the States, it's not uncommon to get like 50,000, 70,000, I think, in that range. Massive ag business, big corporate interests like Tyson's, and they want access to Canada because they want to expand their market. They want the dairy industry as well. That's been a key sore point for Trump since his first term in office. Dairy industry. You think what's going on out of that farm in Edgewood, BC is about the ostriches? It's about far more than that. It's really about trade. It's about exactly what I'm talking about. It's about the poultry industry. It's about an effort, in my view, an effort to bring, as Katie Pasitny said, co-owner of the farm, or one of the operators of the farm out there, bring the CFIA to its knees. Her words. Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Bring the CFIA to its knees. You think this is about the birds, those ostriches alone? It's about trade, but not just the numbers. It's about the standards, the quality standards, the non-tariff barriers, like what are your birds, what's your livestock injected with? What kind of drugs are you injecting into them? Are you injecting hormones into your dairy cows to make them overproduce milk? And those hormones then get into the milk supply. They don't do that here. Well, they do it down there. That's what this is about. People need to wake up to that. That's why you have all this U.S. influence in what's going on out at that farm. That's why you have Dr. Oz and RFK Jr. and Trump and the MAGA administration and John Katzimatidis, the billionaire out of New York who owns the largest grocery store chain in New York State, billionaire, buys a lot of poultry, a lot of meat for his grocery stores. He's involved in that industry, and he's involved in oil. Biggest purchaser of Alberta oil. That guy. You think that he's involved just because he's an animal lover in supporting what's going on out of that circus? China. EVs, the future, energy. Oh man, all these things coming together. And then the delicate position that Canada is in, because if you pivot away from the United States, that's a sin. You have to. So they're saying, and then is Canada then really a country? Are we a sovereign state? Do we get to just decide what we want to be as a country? Do we get to decide what countries we choose to trade with, or do we have to capitulate to the United States? Oh no, I guess we can't trade with China because Trump doesn't like it. He thinks that's a threat. Is it actually a threat, or is it just an economic challenge that the U.S. can't really compete with? That's why you put tariffs in place, because you're not efficient enough, because your workers aren't productive enough, because you don't have the systems in place, because you don't have the comparative advantages. You don't have, just natural, maybe geographic territory that lends itself to the most efficient, productive means not needed to produce a particular kind of good or service. And if you can't compete, then you say, well, then screw that. We're not going to trade with them. And we put these protective barriers in place in order to try to bring jobs here. And then he leverages the economic power of the United States on the consumer side, because they've got this inflated market and higher prices overall, which gives the illusion that they have this economic might. But it's only if people are fearful and other countries are afraid enough that they capitulate and collectively all give in. That's why it's divide and conquer. That's why he wants to renegotiate the USMCA trade deal with Canada and Mexico and the United States by doing it separately. He doesn't want Canada and Mexico in the same agreement now. Divide and conquer, separate, and then if you want access to the U.S. market, then you have to do this. But you're alone and you're alone, negotiated separately. There's no strength in the unification of the two countries. But I would say Canada and Mexico should get together. But then what's Trump going to do? Because he already has troops amassed along the Mexican border. They're going after drug cartels down there as well. He has the Navy off the coast of Venezuela. He has all this stuff ginned up on the Canadian side with all the rhetoric about the terrorism, the open border, the drugs, and then he's doing the same thing up in Greenland. He wants Canada too because of the passage through the Arctic, shipping. Man, I don't envy Mark Carney. I don't envy any politician in this country right now in Canada, because we're in a really tough spot. Have to be very, 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 very careful about what we do right now. Because this president, he's pissed. Somebody shot his ear off and he doesn't care anymore. Now he's angry. And he's out for revenge. Hence the Department of Getting Even, which kind of backfired on him to some degree with Elon Musk, but seems like they've even come to terms reconciled. Here's Global News talking about this tonight. Canoe, Mo want China EV tariffs ended to get Beijing to lift canola duties. Yeah, okay. Great. Till they send F-35s and Abrams tanks across the border. Well, you're not going to trade with those guys. China, China, China. What else do we have for you tonight? Oh, man. Okay, let's take a little break. We're going to come back. We'll talk a little bit about these crazy ostriches again. I don't want to. I want it to end so badly. I just want the story to be over with. But, alas, the standoff continues.
Greetings, brave mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm told I was muted. I don't know how long I've been muted for. Anyone tell me how long I've been muted for? I don't know. It looks like I've been talking because people are commenting on some of the things I've been saying. I guess we shall just continue on. Yeah, I think we're okay. Yeah, I've been talking. All right. I'm here. We're talking. Where shall I begin? I had a call from a friend last night, upset about these ostriches. It alarms me because of the gaslighting that's been going on out of that farm and the way it's affecting people's minds. Here, you know what? I think this is actually an example right here. I don't think I've seen this one, but this is, they're going on out there right now about the number of ostriches. And they are trying to pin something on police and the CFIA. All right, we'll listen in to this short clip. I think this is just, someone must have clipped this one out. This is Jim Kerr.
Birds missing. Now, the concern was that there was birds missing. Now, I had heard this before, and I'd seen that there was definitely a lack of birds up in the front pens, but we just attributed that to them feeding them all at the back where the hay bales are, so that they can get them nice and close to the killing pens. Made sense. But since then, there's been a whole bunch of camera footage and different things that are showing that there is a distinct lack of birds. Okay, from all accounts, they can't account for at least 50 of them. Now, I don't know, okay, because the concern...
Yeah, you don't know, Jim. That's the thing. Let me just see if I can find something else with him. Hang on. I have to say, Jim Kerr has been on this program in the past. And I always felt like Jim Kerr had a kind heart, that he always meant well. Kind of a, a little bit wacky, a little off center, but at the center of it, an intelligent guy, and seemed thoughtful and caring. What I've seen him involved with out there at that farm disappoints me immensely, because it's hurting people. It really is. It's truly hurting people. Now, he just I think this is him giving a free plug to a motel where they were given a discount and even a comped night or two by the motel owner. I don't know, Edgewood. No issues, man. Like, everybody's got to pay their bills, right?
I don't even know what to say now. I was on there thanking somebody for getting us a night hotel at the Arrow Lakes Motel here, and then somebody else bought us a couple of nights in the hotel again. We're good to go for a few days now. You guys rock so hard. He wouldn't let me tell you who he is, but thank you.
So he's got, supporters, and okay, fine. And the hotel gave him a discount, so he's been giving them plugs, free not free advertising, I think, in exchange for, a break on the hotel stay. What do we have here? This is 7 hours ago.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I and my beautiful wife are at the Arrow Lakes Motel. Yeah, one of you guys paid for a night's hotel again for us. We really appreciate that. I want to put special kudos out to Liz over here at the motel. She's been nothing but great to us. She's treated us real well. She gave us a bit of a discount on the room. She's actually comped her room at one point for us. And I really want to give a shout out to her and everybody else that's helping us out.
Okay. So at the risk of, providing free advertising over here, fair enough. That's okay, Jim. I don't have an issue with it, man. You gotta pay your bills.
Stay order still in place, folks.
Okay. But I think we're going to get into something here that I am taking issue with.
If this is indeed the case, folks, there's one of two things.
Here we go.
Concern was that there was birds missing. Now, I had heard this before, and I'd seen that there was definitely a lack of birds up in the front pens, but we just attributed that to them feeding them all at the back where the hay bales are, so that they can get them nice and close to the killing pens. Made sense. But since then, there's been a whole bunch of camera footage and different things that are showing that there is a distinct lack of birds. Okay? From all accounts, they can't account for at least 50 of them. Now, I don't know, okay, because
I smell something. Doesn't smell good. It smells rank.
The blue bins, everybody's saying the blue bins. Yes, okay, there have been blue bins going out, in and out, okay? And we've tracked almost all of them. We've had people dumpster diving, everything. There was a few dumpsters that had locks on them. That was ostensibly to keep the bears out, so they weren't able to get in those ones. But the other ones they've checked, most of them aren't full. They're about a quarter full to a third full with police garbage, lunches, stuff like that. Why they're shipping in, empty containers, shipping out quarter full containers doesn't really make a lot of sense. And did we get to see all of them? No. Have we chased them all down? No. Are we doing our best? Yes. But up until this point, it seems like there is a lack of birds. Now, if this is indeed the case...
Why are we hearing about this? Because They can't keep track of the birds. They didn't have a proper accounting to begin with. CFIA came in. What have we heard for months? Months. They had like 400 and some birds to start with, almost 500. Then the bird flu came. That got them down. For months, we've heard 400. That's the number they kept using at the farm. CFIA comes in. They count the birds. They can only count somewhere like between 300, 330. So you have about 70, maybe 100 birds missing. It's an accounting issue. I've been asking the question, where are the baby birds? Never see any baby birds. Haven't seen any baby birds. It's a question, not an accusation. I'm wondering where the baby birds are. Why aren't there any baby birds? I don't have an answer. This is upsetting people. But why are they talking about this now? At first they were poo-pooing it. And Karen Esperson stood up on a PA system in front of people and clearly stated that they didn't know how many birds they had. She said it's somewhere between 300 and 400 because the CFIA came in with a count and clearly stated that they could only find 300 to 330. And then she said it doesn't matter how many birds there are, that it could, as long as it doesn't matter if it's two, they just have to save them. There's a problem out at that farm, and that's why they're now making this series of videos all focused on the number of birds, because there's a problem and they're trying to get out in front of it. He's gaslighting us, shifting blame before the truth comes out or whatever other evidence might come to bear here in order to circumvent any kind of blame that might properly be affixed for whatever the issue is here. They're getting out, trying to get out in front of an issue that they're already behind because they've been caught in something. At best, it's bad accounting, and they don't know how to count their inventory. At worst, there's something really bad that has been going on. That's why these videos are being made. And there's a series of videos. This isn't like some thing he's mentioning in passing. He's gaslighting us. And I've caught Jim Kerr lying about things all the way along. And I called him out when he made that very brief appearance on our program during that 8-hour-long extravaganza on the Ostrich debate, where he had been telling people the birds had never been injected with anything. And when I asked him about it, I called him out, and he had to admit that what he was saying wasn't true.
Case, folks, there's one of two things happening here. The CFIA is clandestinely at some point removing these birds. They're not doing it live because we'd catch that. So if they are moving these birds, if they're somehow, in some way, shape, or form, and this is a horrible thing to think, but if they're killing the birds at night, the CFIA has already claimed that their policy is above law, but I didn't think they'd go to the point whereby they would just disregard the Supreme Court and all of the edicts that have been passed down. That stay order is still in place, folks. Stay order means everything stays the same. Less birds is not the same. And if this...
First of all, it's not just one of only two things is happening out there. Second, because there are other things that could be happening out there or could have already happened out there. He is making an accusation here, or at least suggesting that there's improper behavior, maybe even illegal behavior or activity by the CFIA and or the RCMP. With no actual proof, he's just sowing seeds of doubt. This is classic disinformation. This is a classic FUD strategy, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. He's sowing seeds of doubt, gaslighting you.
CFIA group of goons think that they're above the laws.
He's already convicted them in this statement, and there's no proof of anything. We know that those birds, the number of birds has been in question since the moment the CFIA took control of the farm. And yeah, there is a stay order in place. If you're going to accuse somebody of something, Jim, you better bring the receipts. This is just, making accusations with no actual proof of anything in order to get people emotional and get everybody jacked up.
Of this land, the entire high court of the land, and can go ahead and take it in their own hands because they think these birds should be tested or whatever, killed or whatever it is they're doing. We just don't know. They won't tell us anything.
Highly, highly, highly unlikely that the CFIA is violating a Supreme Court of Canada directive, a stay order, which prohibits them from killing the birds. Just violating that, ignoring it. Highly unlikely. So unlikely that I would say not only, are pigs flying, but cows, bulls, and ostriches are all in flight together tonight. If that's
it's crazy, folks. It's crazy. If they're doing this, they literally are giving a great big finger to the Supreme Court and all of our court processes.
Yeah, and now you've got it in people's minds, and they think that that's actually what's going on because you're gaslighting everybody. And I'm I'm disappointed in what he's doing out there because this is driving people crazy with bullshit.
We already know they don't care. They don't care about the people. They don't care about what people have to say.
Right.
It's scary, man. Now, let's just say, for instance, that they're not going out in the dumpsters.
So theory number 2, because theory number 1 might not even be true. Could be, might be. I don't know. Don't have any proof, but I'm laying it all out there and creating this uncertainty and this theoretical scenario, blah, 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 with all this bullshit, to quote my great friend Rudy Bruce.
It'd be really weird. It doesn't look like there's any ground that's been disturbed that we can tell anyway, so it doesn't look like they're burying them on site. And if they're not going out in the blue dumpsters, how are they leaving? Well, I don't want to speculate on that. I don't want to speculate that there's, 20 cars coming in twice, a day.
He doesn't want to speculate on it, even though he's speculating on it and creating this scenario. I wouldn't put it past the CFIA to say that they were going to get the birds out of there. But they will not be doing anything. I'd be incredibly surprised if they're doing anything illegal. And I certainly don't think they are killing the birds at this point.
Each of them have trunks. I'm not saying, but wouldn't that be weird?
It would be weird, Jim. Really weird. So why are you even bringing it up? Because you're gaslighting everybody. You're full of shit.
If the RCMP was actually helping them. Now, we did hear a clip yesterday of the PLCs talking about their role in all of this. And one of the PLCs kind of let it slip. We are here to support the FIA. They are a support mechanism for the CFIA. Hold on. The RCMP is a support mechanism for the CFIA?
Yeah.
I thought the RCMP was a support mechanism to make sure that there was peace.
Both.
Make sure that everything was done lawfully.
Both.
Orderly and peacefully.
Both.
I didn't think they were playing support for anybody.
Both.
They sure as hell haven't been supporting the farm. They've supporting...
I don't know about that, Jim. You were hugging a police officer just the other day. You were hugging him.
They're supporting the fact that the supporters aren't allowed near the birds. They're supporting that fact.
Because they've secured the area and they have control now, the CFIA. So yeah, for the time being, it's under CFIA control. And that means, yeah, you're not allowed to go in there.
But if they're running support for the CFIA and there's birds missing, this is scary, man.
Yeah, birds missing. Where did they go? Because they were missing immediately. They were missing when the CFIA took control. He knows it. And I'm calling him out. The reason I'm calling him out is because I'm getting calls from people who are not right in the mind because of what he and others out there are doing. And it's sick. It really truly is. I'm going to come back to that in a moment because it needs to be said. What I'm saying here tonight needs to be said. And I see that all our great supporters over on Twitch have all left, not unexpected, because they don't want to hear it, because they can't handle actual truth, a perspective that gets them closer to what the truth actually is. They'd rather listen to that bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. You think the RCMP is taking dead birds out in the trunks of their cars? Bullshit. In defiance of a Supreme Court of Canada stay order? Bullshit. That would be a career-limiting move. If that ever came out in the public, if any officer was caught doing anything like that, that would be the end of their career for sure. So go ahead, Jim, prove it. Prove it. Bring the RCMP down. Prove that. You show me any evidence that the RCMP is there secretly carrying dead birds out right now, or in any way in defiance of a Supreme Court of Canada stay order in the trunks of their vehicles or in the backs of SUVs or in any other vehicle. You show me any evidence that the Supreme Court of Canada stay order has actually been violated and that they were killing these birds in defiance of that. Show me. Don't hide behind a maybe and a gee, I think maybe something like this might be happening. I don't want to speculate, but because you're driving people loopy. And it goes beyond like just that one issue. I'm going to come back to it. But, you know, from the other perspective on what's going on under that farm, you know, there was another guy who posted a video, rightly so in a way, because he calls out this. I haven't spoken to this other doctor. We've had Dr. Pellick on, right? Here, said his piece, caught him in a few things that I would say were not really truthful. Here's this lady. Okay. So I did reach out at one point over the last couple of weeks to this Dr. Rasmussen. This is another doctor with an alternative point of view. She's highly political, no question about that. So I'd say she's biased, but very credible, smart lady, interviewed generally by mainstream media on this issue, and critical of what's going on at the farm. I did reach out to her and I asked her if she would do an interview, and she has not responded. That's part of the problem here is you don't get wide, like real communication going on between the two sides. And I'm trying to present all sides of the issue. So she hasn't responded. To Dr. Pellick's credit, he came on. It's clearly not true, some of the things that he said, like you can get these antigens that they were injecting into these birds at the local pharmacy. You don't need a permit to run an open air biolab. Again, some gaslighting going on there, I would say. Certainly what Jim Kerr is involved with, gaslighting. But the other video with regard to Rasmussen is she has been advocating or supporting the call that this has to take place. But she, a couple of days ago, posted a comment somewhere within the Toronto Star information sphere saying that she says at this point, I think she's not sure. She may not even be surprised if the birds are not actually a threat at this point. But the call needs to proceed anyway because it's the principle of the thing. I get it. And now people are like, well, she's admitting that the birds aren't a threat. Yeah. But as I've also indicated, and people are, I've indicated that it isn't just about whether the birds are infected now, because this has become so political. And because this is a question of legality, it's a question of what's going to happen in court. So it's a very weird scenario. And I think, honestly, as much as this other doctor, I don't know the lady, I've never spoken to her, I'm aware of her, I'm not trying to defend her, but I understand what she is saying here. And as much as it seems contradictory to what she has said before, I also realize that she's actually being honest. She's not lying. She's being honest about it. And what she's really saying here is that, yeah, they might not be infected at this point. They might not be a threat at this point. But because of the CFIA policies, which say that even if the birds are exposed, they have to be disposed of. That is the standing policy. And more than that, the thing that makes this complicated and hard for people to truly understand, because the truth is elusive, but a lie is always just a lie. And in this particular case, this is a very complex situation because there may have actually been a path through which the farm could have saved these birds early on. All they really had to do was comply with the rules. So if they had complied with the orders to quarantine their birds when the bird flu was detected after they had 69 of them die, if they had put up the netting to keep wildlife out around their pond, if they had taken steps to mitigate the risk, there are some provisions, as I understand it, where they might have been able to go to court and then get an exception to this cull based on their good behavior and their willingness to minimize the risk. But they did not follow any of the rules. So as far as the government is concerned, as far as the CFIA is concerned, as far as the court is concerned, they can't be trusted to take any steps to mitigate the risk. And they didn't do anything to isolate their birds when they were told to. They didn't do any of this stuff. They didn't follow any of the rules. And it takes a high bar in order to get an exemption from a cull. I'm not sure if it's ever even happened, but there are provisions, as I understand some of the language that I've read, that it could possibly have happened. But not when they take this path where they basically said, no, we don't want your compensation. We're just going to challenge this all the way along the line and drag this out over time. And now we're at this strange point in time. See, the cull orders are issued and need to be executed in an expeditious manner. Need to happen quickly in order to prevent spread. But they didn't do that. They've dragged it on for months and months and months and months and months using lawfare with no regard for the welfare of other farms around there. And the issue is complex. I don't want to see birds die, but the farmers have put the birds in this position, in this weird position, because you've got trade policies, you've got the welfare of other farms around there. You have the issue of whether you're rewarding bad behavior by allowing the farm owners to keep their flock, because it is a property rights issue more than so much an issue of, ethically, should we kill these birds? And in the court, they're going to be looking at this in terms of, did the CFIA have the authority? Were they justified in issuing the cull order at the time that it was issued? That's the question that is really before the courts. And that they keep losing when they go to court. They just don't like the outcome. So they keep challenging it. And they've allowed this to go on all the way now for 10 plus months, almost a year, to give them their due process, to give them their days in court. Meanwhile, Jim Kerr is sitting there saying that the whole system is corrupt, that it's all weighted in favor against the farm. And in reality, everything has been weighted in favor of the farm in order to give them every opportunity to state their case. And they keep losing. Will the Supreme Court hear this case at that level? Will this become some sort of a constitutional question? I doubt it. That's just me providing my feedback based on what I've heard from legal experts and from what I've been reading. But they could hear it. I don't know. And if it does, it does. But they have not followed the rules. This lady posted, she's another farmer. She's gone through all of this. And this is the other perspective. And so don't take it from me when I say they haven't followed the rules. Listen to what this farmer who's been through this process has to say, because she's repeating everything I've been telling everybody here for months.
I would weigh in on the BC Ostrich Farm story because I actually went through the entire avian influenza process with the CFIA back in 2022. Now, my barn was infected. I watched every single one of my birds die horrible deaths. It took 7 days to completely wipe out my flock. So I think I have a little bit of a unique perspective when it comes to this as someone who's actually been through the entire avian influenza journey from start to finish dealing with the CFIA. Some things that I'm seeing come out of this directly from the owner of the farm by watching interviews and then reading CFIA reports, because all the reports are online. You can actually even go look up my farm report. It's all there. Every single case of avian influenza is posted on the CFIA website by farm. So first thing that I noticed was the biggest red flag was she didn't actually report that her birds were sick to the CFIA. Her neighbor had to report these sick birds. So initially, right off the get-go, she was trying to hide the fact that her birds had avian influenza. When she has said that she was denied independent testing or that there was no testing whatsoever done, if you go look at the CFIA reports, you can actually see that 2 birds were in fact tested and they came back positive. Now, it doesn't matter if 1 bird is tested or the entire flock is tested. In my case, it was the entire flock. But 1 positive case condemns your entire flock. It doesn't matter. It is such a contagious virus, and it can live on organic material for so incredibly long that if you don't do something to stop it right in its tracks, it's just going to spread like wildfire. Now, when she says that she was denied independent testing and threatened with jail time over this, I again say, no, that's not how it works, because I was told that I could independently test my flock for avian influenza so long as it was in conjunction with the CFIA and my vets followed proper avian influenza biosecurity protocols. So to say that she was denied testing and then that none of her flock was ever tested is a big pile of crap. When she says she was denied compensation for her birds, again, you go back and read the reports. That is not, in fact, the case. She actually refused compensation for her flock. Now, she was offered $3,000 per bird, which is fair market value. I was offered fair market value for all of my birds, and I was compensated very fairly for them. You'll even get compensated for your hours you put in to clean up and do all of your disposal and your disinfection. You will be reimbursed for your bales, your feed, everything. Everything that has to be destroyed because avian influenza can live on organic material for so long. It essentially all has to be destroyed just to protect all the wildlife around you and other farms who are raising birds. She was not doing her disposal properly when her birds did die, from reports stating that she had birds that were just left all over her yard with tarps thrown on them so that any wild bird could come in and nibble on these dead ostriches who clearly died from avian influenza and then go spread it to the flocks. Now, the thing with avian influenza is all it takes is a little piece of infected fecal matter, saliva, or snot infects 1 bird. That bird goes to the entire flock of migratory birds like Canadian geese flying, and the entire flock will be sick and dead and suffer unbelievably horrible deaths. That is why it is so important to contain this virus. That is why there is a stamp out policy. You cannot allow this virus to create herd immunity and all of that sort of thing. It is just so incredibly dangerous.
The chickens,
Now,
especially.
another thing that she stated was that the CFIA doesn't actually come in and cull your animals. Again, not exactly true. Now, when the cull team came to my property to put down whatever birds were left, and like there wasn't a lot left, but still they brought in the culling team. And they brought them in. They also brought in like porta potties and a dumpster for them to put some of their PPE and all of that. Now, like they set up separate zones because I have seen arguments of people saying, well, the CFIA wasn't even putting on their PPE when they come in. Well, they're not going to. They're going to have that yard set up in a red zone, a yellow zone, and a green zone. Green zone meaning no danger. Yellow zone is warm. Okay, we need to start putting the PPE on. Red zone, full PPE. So when they would come back from wherever the red zone was, all PPE must be taken off, removed, and then they bag everything up. They seal those bags, and then once they hit that yellow zone, everything that was under the PPE is going to be sprayed with a disinfectant. But they don't bring in these like hired hitman thugs to come and put your birds down. No, they bring in actual members of the CFIA as part of their cull team. They come in and they will put these birds down in the most humane way possible. Now, in our case, it was a specialized tool that just came in and broke their necks. They felt nothing. It was instant. Do not misunderstand me here when I say all this in kind of a way that I'm not breaking down emotionally. It has been 3 years for me. It was the hardest thing I have ever been through. I loved my birds. I really, truly did. Every single one of my birds had a name. Every single one of my birds was either hatched in an incubator in my house and then lived in breeder boxes in my house, or they were hatched by hens that I had, again, hatched in my house. Every bird had a personality. Every bird meant a lot to me. But you know what? I did the responsible thing. I contacted my Alberta provincial vet, who then contacted the CFIA, and then I dealt with the process in a responsible manner because I did not need this virus spreading to all of my neighboring farms and to the wild flocks. Now, you see these protesters that are all in there. These are massive groups, and they are coming into contact with infected material. But when they leave, are they disinfecting everything that they've had on? And the disinfection mixture has to be 1 part bleach, 4 parts water. Are they doing all this? Are they using Virkon to disinfect their shoes? No, they're not. They're going back home and they're spreading avian influenza just all around, just sprinkles of this horrid virus. So it's incredibly irresponsible. Another thing with the protest group that I really don't agree with is the neighbor has been beaten up. They've burnt a flag of the Canadian flag, threw it on the fire, and then they're threatening the RCMP on a daily basis. This is not how you deal with this. This is a horrendous virus that does need to be stamped out and contained. My opinion, those birds should have been culled months ago. Months ago. I don't understand how this has been allowed to drag on for as long as it has. This farmer is the most irresponsible producer I have ever come across or seen in my life. And for her to say that, well, my birds never entered the food chain, what does it matter? Well, my birds never entered the food chain either, but you know what? They were still a risk to the sparrows and the magpies that would fly in and then come into contact with migratory birds. You're not doing the responsible thing, and you're not doing your birds any favors here. You are hurting the industry. You are hurting your neighboring farms. You are hurting your neighboring community. And it just is horrible. Your birds did enter the food chain. You were selling meat, eggs, and oils from them at one point, but your website's all been deleted. Now, I think these birds need to be put down as soon as possible. I think proper biosecurity and containment needs to be put in place instantly. And I honestly believe that the owners of this ostrich farm should have the legal book thrown at them.
A lot of people don't want to hear things like that. Getting messages already. Jim Kerr's not ever coming back on your show. I don't care. What value is there in having a liar on? So I can have him promote his lies? And when I catch somebody in a lie, then I can't really trust him anymore. And there have been many lies. And what am I seeing out there? I'm seeing allegations with no proof, gaslighting. That's been the case all the way along with this whole bloody thing. You don't want to hear it. You wait. Oh, and the person that called me last night, I've got something I need to say to you, and I'm waiting for that. I'm going to come to that. It's important. Some people just can't handle the truth. They don't want the truth. I think they enjoy the misery, the doomsday scenarios, but they don't want to hear that the farm that they're trying to protect, apparently, from a cull is actually being involved in culling their own birds in the past. I've actually told people about this, but the truth is complicated. It's elusive. When I'm on here 3 hours a night and the information is spread out over many, many nights, and I'm one of the few voices out there trying to present all sides of the story, not just the other side of the story or a side of the story or a narrative. When I'm trying to bring actual information to people, and it takes place over time, a lot of people have trouble kind of piecing it all together, but the information has all been here. And the reality is this farm, if you scroll down, this is Canuck Law, and they've posted some of the court documents, actual documents with evidence presented by the farm. This is quotes from Justice Zinn's decision. It says from approximately 2020 onward, the applicant shifted its primary commercial focus to extracting and studying antibodies, notably immunoglobulin Y from ostrich eggs. For the applicant, these antibodies have lucrative commercial and research values, especially in the development of diagnostics or therapeutics relevant to human viruses, such as the COVID-19 causing virus of SARS-CoV-2. And they talk about the business end of all of this and what it meant to the farm owners at the farm, which is something I've highlighted here. And this is really why they refused the compensation from the CFIA, because it's pretty clear that they were in financial debt and they were trying to find a way forward in a way that they wouldn't go bankrupt because of the investments they'd made in antigens and the whole COVID research project that they were apparently involved with. And yes, they were a food production facility beforehand, pivoted to research during the pandemic because they couldn't get their birds to market, because they couldn't get them slaughtered because there were backlogs at the abattoirs in the area. In any event, also, as part of these court documents, it says right here, and I've highlighted this, but this is very important. The applicant has developed, right here, what it considers a uniquely large strain of ostriches through, get this, important. I've highlighted this, but only in passing in the past, but it's an important key consideration here, especially for people who are against culling the birds. The applicant has developed what it considers a uniquely large strain of ostriches through selective breeding since the 1990s. The ostriches are allegedly selected for body size and favorable genetic traits, with surplus birds not meeting these standards being discarded or culled. Did you hear what I just said? The ostriches are allegedly selected for body size and favorable genetic traits, with surplus birds not meeting these standards being discarded or culled. The court documents support what I said months ago, also support the evidence presented by Dr. Pellick himself, saying that there was research, genetic research, that was taking place at the farm from its inception, from the time the farm was created, when it first was established back in the 1990s. Some of that work done with the University of British Columbia. What were they doing out there? The same thing that has been done with a lot of chicken farming operations over decades. They were engaging in selective breeding, eugenics for birds, for ostriches. Through selective breeding, chickens over time have been, certain growth traits have been bred into them so that they grow very quickly. They get fat really fast. Some animal rights activists say that that's even inhumane because they've bred these traits into the chickens so much that some of the chickens, when they're born, can't even support their own weight on their own feet. But they breed these birds simply to grow quickly, to get maximum meat production out of them, while they stuff them in these little cages on a piece of paper, not much larger than, or on in a space not much larger than this notepad. And they live in that confined space. That's big ag. That's industrial farming. The farm, based on that court document, proving that they were involved in selective breeding of birds. That means that what they would do is they would breed the birds, the eggs would hatch. If the birds didn't exhibit specific traits or characteristics, like if they don't grow fast enough, they would cull them, just kill them. Perfectly healthy birds, but if they don't meet the criteria, if they're not big enough, if they're not strong enough, if they're not fat enough, if they're not tall enough, if they're not growing fast enough, they just kill them. They cull those birds because they don't want them. And then the birds that do exhibit those characteristics, they keep those, they grow them to maturity, they breed those birds to get those characteristics bred into future generations of the birds. And then over many years, you get the birds they've got on the farm right now that are genetically unique because of selective breeding. But how many birds were culled between the 1990s and where we're at today in order to get the kinds of birds with the genetic traits that are present in them right now? That's one of the main reasons they're saying we don't want our birds culled, because they have decades of genetic engineering through selective breeding, not digital breeding, but the same breeding techniques that have been used over many, many decades to breed specific traits into chickens. The problem with doing selective breeding like that is that you get unintended consequences. You get inbreeding going on, and you get maybe a bird that grows very quickly, but the immune system may be compromised because those traits have been bred out of the bird in favor of getting a fast growing bird. That's one of the reasons chickens are so susceptible to bird flu. That's one of the explanations that you may find online if you go looking at documentation and studies into these things. Because the birds, the chickens, have been bred for a specific purpose, to grow really quick so that we can feed massive numbers of people. And it's been through selective breeding rather than through like injecting them with things to make them grow. It's a more natural way to do it so that we get food that is cleaner as human beings. So they don't have to inject them with growth hormone in order to make sure that human beings don't go hungry so we can feed the masses. It's a double-edged sword. But that's what was going on at the farm. The point being, they're sitting there complaining about the cull when they clearly were involved in this kind of activity themselves for a long time, or at least so it appears. Now, I can stand to be corrected. If they want to clarify anything on this, they're welcome to come back on the program. But I'm told here tonight that Jim Kerr will never come back on the show. So be it. No loss as far as I'm concerned, because I'm so incredibly disappointed in what I'm seeing from him. A guy that I thought was basically, kind of straight up would, stand up against government overreach or would go out and protest, and more power to you to do that. But my God, to lie to people, gaslight people like that, deflect blame, try to get out ahead of a problem that they clearly have out at the farm because they've got an accounting issue. Rather than take responsibility for it or come clean on it for whatever reason, they're trying to deflect and make it look like the CFIA and the RCMP have been involved in something shadowy, conspiratorial, so that you don't question what they've been doing prior to this. Yet we know that they kept saying 400 birds, 400 birds, 400 birds, then 398, then 398. Now it's like, oh, there's missing birds. What has the CFIA and the RCMP been doing? They must be killing them against the Supreme Court stay order. I was not born yesterday. I'm not that gullible. You can fool some of the people some of the time, and maybe even all the people some of the time. Maybe even me once in a while. Maybe more than I should be fooled. But right now, pretty clear to me, this is a bunch of bullshit. And it's dangerous. And this is where I come tonight to my friend who phoned last night. And I'm so saddened and upset because this friend called upset with me because I'm apparently all wrong. And I've said, if I've got anything wrong, I'll run a retraction. Show me where I'm wrong. I'm happy to run a retraction because I want people to have the truth. If I've got anything wrong, tell me what it is. Give me a list. And if you can prove to me that I've said something improper, that's wrong, factually wrong, I will run a retraction. I don't want any incorrect information that out there. If I've conveyed it, I will take responsibility for it always. And I have, on a rare occasion, done that. It's the responsible thing to do. The problem is, my friend called, just livid, upset with me, convinced. I mean, we had the discussion about a number of these issues, not willing to accept anything that I've said, not willing to accept any of the information that I've conveyed, even documented information. Proof, solid when I'm saying some of this stuff, because I've verified it as factual. Just like the court document. Yeah, they were involved in selective breeding of these birds. It's in the court documents provided by the farm itself, but a lot of people won't want to believe it. Were they culling their own birds? Oh, it looks like it. But people don't want to hear that. They just want to hear what they want to hear. Dismiss everything else. Because you know what? At the end of the day, what this isn't about the damn birds, and these protesters aren't there really. Some of them are there for the birds, but the people at the center of this thing, it's not about the birds. It's just an anti-government protest, and it's just the protest of the day or maybe of this year. You go back in time, it's like, where were they last year? Where did they go to the summer before that? And this is just the latest thing. It's just an anti-government protest. They don't really care about the birds. Anything they can do to disrupt. The motivations, we've explored some of that. We can get into that again another time. But the bottom line is, this is just an anti-government protest. The result, though, because of all this gaslighting that's taking place out there, the craziness that has been portrayed out there, the way they're using emotion and this information warfare strategy, it is literally driving people a little bit loopy. And this is classic. Like, this is spreading FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. This is seeding doubt, planting seeds of doubt. These are techniques used by governments, political activists. It's a subtle form of psychological manipulation. It's often used in activism, propaganda, misinformation campaigns to gradually shift public perception, very much like the way a conspiracy theory takes root over time. Ostriches are not poultry. Yes, they are. Look it up. In fact, it's been so effective out there with regard to that. If you look up, are ostriches poultry, considered poultry, on Google, the results that I get repeatedly indicate that yes, they are considered poultry, and the whole explanation as to why. But then there are now posts that say ostriches are not poultry, but you know where they all come from? The farm. Because they've injected this narrative into the information ecosystem so that they are changing perception. It's been that effective because they have such critical mass with their independent journalists. This is gaslighting. And if the intent here is to make people question established facts, like the official bird counts or court compliance, then yeah, what he's doing there, this absolutely fits into this tactic of gaslighting. It involves distorting reality to make to make you, the audience, the consumer of information, doubt their own understanding of reality or even the official narrative, whatever. Governments do it too, but that's what's going on out there. That's not truth. And I'm going to explain why it's so damn dangerous what they're doing right now. This is like conspiracy mongering, speculative insinuation. It's what he's doing there, Jim Kerr and some others out there hinting at illicit activity. Police aiding a secret kill off of the birds with no proof. They're relying on ambiguity so that you fill in the blanks with worst case assumptions. It's obscene because you're twisting people's minds. No, you really are. And you've been very, very effective with it. You amplify ambiguity. You highlight gaps in information to suggest something sinister is being hidden. You imply wrongdoing. You make vague accusations like birds seem to be missing. That invites speculation without proof and deflects blame because it's the farm the onus was on the farm all the way along to count the damn birds. But their count didn't match what the CFIA came up with. Now you have missing birds and you're blaming the CFIA for something that the farm was always responsible for. You question motives. You cast doubt on the integrity of authorities to erode trust. And that's been a big problem for a long time, for years now. Erosion of trust in our institutions, faith in our country, hence burning of the flag. That's the point that you've taken people to out there, to the point where they hate the country. It's all emotional. It's an emotional appeal. You're using charged language and even imagery, showing the injured bird to bypass logic, stir visceral reactions. You personify these animals, this livestock with names to make people care about them. It's extremely effective storytelling. And this is a managed information campaign. You see it with Jeff Gaudry, managing the media out there. He's the guy, he's the media manager. He's interacting with all the media as they come out. He's the guy who contacts media. He's the guy who contacted me. He's the guy who stands beside Katie Pasitny when she does the interviews. He keeps her on message, on point, especially when she's being interviewed by media. He was there at her side the entire time she was on this program, and he was there himself on the program as well to manage the information flow. And then they share this in a way to make it go viral because they've recruited all these social media streamers. They get them all on cue. He's even talked about staying on message because this is a professionally managed information campaign, and you're sharing fear, uncertainty, and doubt via social media to reach sympathetic audiences quickly, in unison, and encouraging reposts to amplify the impact. Facebook has been the platform that has helped facilitate all of this. And I have to wonder about the algorithms there and the influence of Meta and maybe even the Trump administration through all of this, as well as efforts on the US side to circumvent any effort on the Canadian side to regulate the flow of information through social media, through legislation, in order to potentially avert a threat to our sovereignty through the information warfare campaign. And the key elements of a FUD campaign through activism, lack of evidence, claims are usually speculative, just like Jim Kerr engaged in, relying on what-if scenarios rather than verifiable facts. For example, in the case of this ostrich farm, he's claiming that the birds are missing, and he exploits the owner's prior uncertainty about bird counts without proof of a secret cull. No proof of anything. And it messes with people's perceptions. Selective framing, it's information that is presented out of context intentionally to mislead. Mentioning the Supreme Court stay, implying that its violation omits whether the stay actually applies or if legal processes are being followed. And then plausible deniability. FUD avoids direct accusations that could invite legal backlash, saying, it seems like, or why are they hiding this? It allows activists like Jim Kerr out there to dodge accountability while planting these seeds of doubt in your mind. And he's targeting trust because he's attacking these institutions that he wants to undermine. The CFIA, the police, already viewed skeptically by certain groups, especially a lot of the people at the farm, a lot of the people in our audience as well. It makes all of us more receptive to these narratives that they're spinning up out there. And we know what the motivation is because Katie has stated it. They want to bring the CFIA to its knees, abolish it, and bring in something new. Not telling us exactly what that might ultimately be. Animal rights activists use this stuff all the time. You get it through environmental activism, anti-vaccine activism, political activism, but you see it a lot on the left. You see it a lot through animal rights groups. That's kind of what's going on out there right now. These people protesting are supposed to be what? On the freedom side? Isn't that supposed to be more on the conservative side of things or the right wing? And yet they're using the exact tactics. They're acting just like far left animal rights activists. I have to wonder what's in store for these folks out there next. What are you going to do next? Are you going to grab some red paint and throw it on a statue of Sir John A. Macdonald? Are you going to, I don't know, super glue your face to a farm fence post so that the police can't remove you from the protest? You're going to, I don't know, chain yourself to an ostrich and ride it around? You know, we've already heard them saying, like, to knock down all the fences. This is classic left-wing animal rights activism, except that the actual animal rights activists won't come out and support you because the place was originally engaged in meat production. It's Looney Tunes. It's what I'm seeing going on out there. It defies logic. How did these people end up out there supporting the COVID research facility and opposing a cull at a farm where they were culling their animals before anyway, and now they're suddenly against culls? And what are they saving these birds for? More research? Condemned to a life as lab animals? Who's going to pay for it? We don't even have a plan. We keep talking about this stuff. We're going around in circles, but that's because of this crazy information warfare that's being waged out there, and it's been very effective. But it's not about truth. The people out there, they just want to win. They just want a political win. It's not about the birds. And that is also why, yeah, Dr. Rasmussen, I think, kind of being honest, they might not even be infected anymore, but it's the principle of the thing. She's just being straight up. Yeah, it's on the political side. She's saying, doesn't matter. They got to cull them anyway because you can't reward the bad behavior. I know it defies logic. It doesn't make sense. I feel for the birds. Whatever happens, happens. I don't want to see the birds die. But at the same time, I understand the arguments. I'm presenting the information. You can listen to it or not, but this is the information. Regardless of my personal views on whether the bird should live or die, and you don't really know what I think. You think you do because I'm presenting both sides of the story. So whichever side you are on, you think I'm on the opposite side. Because in the media sphere, everybody out there is picking a side. They're on a team. And so it's become this side versus that side. There's old school journalism that I'm accustomed to practicing pretty much doesn't exist anymore. So when I'm presenting alternative information, other information, more information, I'm trying to get Dr. Rasmussen on. I've had Dr. Pellick on. I want them both on. And I'm presenting both points of view. I had Jim Kerr on, clearly gaslighting, calling it out for what it is, because it's not my job to just sit here and say, he says, she says. If someone is clearly engaging in bad faith behavior, I will call that out because that is also my job. And I'm disappointed that I've had to do that tonight with Jim Kerr, who I considered to be, more than just an acquaintance, maybe a kindred spirit in the pursuit of truth and justice, only to see his behavior out there deteriorate over time and become worse and worse, where he's engaged in this, running some sort of a weird defense, proactive defense for whatever thing has happened out there that needs that kind of gaslighting. My job is to present all the information to get you closer to the truth, and I'm here to serve you, to serve the public interest. That's always my goal. You're evil, Rick. You just want the birds dead. If that's the way you want to look at it. My friend called last night. Back to my friend. This is why it's so dangerous. My friend believes that if the call proceeds, it will set some sort of a precedent where the CFIA, after they call all the ostriches, will then proceed to go to every other farm, at least in the province of British Columbia, maybe even beyond, every farm, and kill all the livestock for all the farmers. When my friend told me that, I was flabbergasted. How did my friend come to that conclusion? It is not the way any of that will transpire. That's not what will happen. That's not what is happening. The CFIA already has precedents in place. This is not the first time there's been a cull. These culls have been happening for decades. Only now, at this farm, has it been highlighted and brought forth into the public spotlight for this strange, if you'll excuse the pun, a kangaroo court of public opinion on this issue. And it's a circus. And I know how scary this must feel, watching this ostrich farm situation unfold. You know, you're worrying that it can spiral into something that affects every farm in BC. It does affect every farm, but the CFIA is not going to go after this. Once we get those ostriches all culled, then it's on to the next farm, and we're going to kill all those birds, and then the next one. No, that is not what is happening. They're trying to stop the spread of the virus and keep their system in place and their authority so that they can, in their view, use this policy to stop the virus when it does infect a farm so that it doesn't spread to other farms or it slows the spread. There's no solution to this problem, which is why the activists have latched onto it. There's only management of it because there's no cure at this point for this disease. So they're, in short, doing their best. And it's natural to feel protective of local farmers and their livelihoods, especially with all the emotional stories circulating. But let's just slow down, take a breath, look at the facts, and how this is actually working. The good news here, and this is a fact, this cull at this one farm does not trigger mass culls across all poultry or livestock operations automatically. Culls are targeted. It's not a blanket policy. The CFIA only orders a cull on a specific farm where avian flu, like H5N1, is confirmed through lab tests. That's where the stamping out approach comes in. And this follows, yes, international guidelines from these world organizations, but it's about the trade relationships that we have with other countries, whether we're allowed to export our poultry to other markets, not just the United States, which wants access to our market so that they can put the small farmers out of business with their big U.S. ag corporations like Tyson Farms. 11 times the size of the Canadian poultry industry. Many of their chicken operations are like 2 times, 3 times the size of the largest Canadian farm operations. The Canadian system is designed specifically to protect smaller Canadian farm operations, including family farms, to make sure that our farmers can make a living so that we have food sovereignty, the ability to feed ourselves as a nation. The U.S. wants access. Trump wants access. And they don't, and it could destroy the family farm operations, small farm operations, and food sovereignty within Canada, making us entirely dependent on big U.S. corporations, ag corporations. You got to think of this cull business as like putting out a spot fire in the forest. The firefighters don't burn down the whole woods just because one tree caught on fire. The CFIA tests and quarantines only the farms that show signs so healthy birds stay safe. Now, you see, the CFIA never would have gone to that farm had they not been reported. And they were reported because somebody became aware, a neighbor or somebody else became aware that there was bird flu on the farm. They saw all these birds dying. And as I've reported, as that other farmer indicated, that this is documented. The CFIA showed up. They had the birds at that farm under tarps, dead, laying on the ground, many of them, some of them half-eaten by wildlife, not properly disposed of, not following the rules, and they were trying to hide it. That's one of the reasons they got fined. Beyond where, this court decision. They don't go farm to farm without evidence. Just, we're here to kill your chickens. Why? Just because? They don't do that. There has to be a reason. There has to be evidence that bird flu is present on the premises. Then they test. If they find it present, Then they proceed with whatever measures they need to, which generally includes a cull, with compensation to make the farmer at least pretty close to whole again, so they can start over with new birds. Because that's property rights. They don't just kill the birds and leave the farmers with nothing and put them out of business, which is the other fear. I know, because they want to depopulate the earth and they want to murder us all. That's what is going through the minds of people tonight. This is why this stuff is so dangerous. You heard from that farmer. She was compensated at fair market value for her birds when they culled them, plus additional money to compensate for the expense of culling the birds at the farm themselves, because they followed the rules. And other farms are getting that all the time. And it's maybe not the best thing that ever happens to them, but because we live in Canada, and this is like essentially farm insurance for which they pay no premiums. If this happens to your farm, there's help there, support. You can call that socialism if you want. Some people just call it insurance, or a safety net to make sure that our farmers don't go broke. Because that's the system we have. A system that some people want to bring to its knees while they tell you they're the ones out there protecting family farms. Not following the rules, and certainly in the early stages of this, hiding infected birds. Clearly, at that point, for sure, a risk. Where does it stand now? It's complicated now. And this is, just to clarify, this is about chickens, turkeys, ostriches, poultry, but not all livestock. The CFIA does not go around just culling all animals. And I know that's in the minds of some people as well. And I've had people, what are they going to do when they come for your dog? The CFIA does not have a culling policy for dogs and cats. And the scenario there for a pet dog or cat is entirely different, because if my dog becomes infected with bird flu, I can more easily quarantine my dog and keep it away, and I can keep it in the house so it doesn't come into contact with wildlife over a period of time, and until it becomes well. And because it's like one animal, or maybe if you've got 2 or 3 dogs or cats, you can manage that within a household, even with the care of a vet. And if the dog or cat becomes so ill from it, and there have been instances of this where the animal is suffering, then you can decide, with consultation with a veterinarian, whether you should have the animal put down for humanitarian reasons, which is one of the reasons these culls are taking place anyway. It's because the birds suffer when they become ill, and when they get sick, they do die a horrific death when they die. Swelled up brains, they bleed out, they have constant diarrhea, they die over a number of days, suffering the entire time. It is the humane thing to do, honestly, when you have a flock of chickens infected, because they die at such a high rate and the pain and suffering is horrific. Less so with ostriches, also less so with alligators, which also can be infected with bird flu, exhibit no symptoms whatsoever, and not, they don't get sick from it, but they can carry it around. I showed you the studies on that. That's why I made that song, Gatorade. To have a concert to save the gators down at Alligator Alcatraz. More political theater down there. That place is now closed down, as I understand it. So the focus here is on prevention, whether you care to believe it or not. And it's clearly that's what it is. Is it the right way to go? That's debatable. Are these cull policies practical? You can argue against them, but there's a process for that. A responsible way to address it. This isn't it. Now, you have a right to protest. I support that. But what I don't support is gaslighting, lying, and information warfare campaigns that really are propaganda designed to twist people's minds and shift people's entire perspectives to the point where they become so misinformed that they become filled with fear and cry. With so much fear that they think the government is literally trying to starve us all to death by going around killing all the livestock, preparing to kill all the livestock. That is not true. That's where this bullshit at the farm has taken us tonight. I have people just out of their minds with emotion. Not crazy, like they're not insane, but yeah, it would be insane for the CFIA to go farm to farm to farm to farm to farm after they kill the ostriches and just start killing, going on like a chicken Nazi killing spree. Killing all the chickens and all the turkeys and all the ostriches and all the emus that they can find. You got a bird in there? I'm coming for your budgie. It's not going to happen. Shame on you. Shame on all of you. There are two sides to this story. The issue deserves to be explored in a legitimate, constructive way, in a responsible way. But shame on all of you who are participating in this mind-bending mind game. You're hurting people. People, not birds. I'm so disappointed. It's not right what you're doing. Facts are facts, opinions are opinions. The truth is elusive. But a lie is always just a lie. The problem is the lies are being spread so thick and so fast. The truth is being drowned out. True perspective being obscured. People not thinking straight. A lot of very scared people out there. For those of you who are still watching this tonight, thank you for being brave enough to look at this information, consider it. Some people just, it's not even just that they can't handle the truth, they don't want the truth. I think they'd rather revel in the misery of a doomsday scenario. There's a certain adrenaline rush, I think, that comes from it. That in itself is addictive and not healthy. This whole social media thing, it's taking us down a very dark rabbit hole. Dark down there. So tonight I thought, I don't know how to combat this massive, corrupt information warfare campaign that is literally twisting people's minds. Because I'm just one guy being increasingly isolated by people who I'm told just don't like me. But that's okay. I'm quite happy to be the most hated journalist on the internet. There's a badge of honor. I stand for truth, even if I stand all alone. Because I'm going to climb out of this goddamn dark, deep hole because I'm going to let the sun shine in. I hope you do too. See you guys tomorrow. Love you, even if you hate me. 7 p.m. Eastern. On the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.